G'day guys, how are you? And welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to discuss classes. So I recently had a person inbox me, was an animal, was a person, and they said to me, Andrew, can you make a detailed video on classes? You know, there are many tutorials out there on the internet, but I find your way of explaining things a little bit simpler, and yeah, it'd be great if you could do that for me, you know, regards such and such. So here we are, let's do it. So I've just done a quick console application, and yeah, yours will look probably like this, except you might have the parameters there, string args, but yeah, nevertheless, it should look something very similar. So when we create a class, I'm going to create a class based on a person. So just quickly, we've got our namespace, okay? So this our namespace is console app 17. We've got our first class, which is just program, and within that class, we've got our static void main. Our program is opening up from inside, you know, this static void here. So if I just, you know, type in console right line, and I'll just write here, I run the program, it'll write here to the console because that's where it's starting from, okay? So that's our starting point. So let me just comment that out. So when we're creating a class, I mean, it's really helpful when you're creating an object. So for this particular tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a person object, okay? So let's begin. So in order to create your class, you need to make sure you're outside of the class program. So in this case, we want to go underneath those brackets there. And it's really helpful having these dotted lines there so you can see exactly which class you're in for that matter, or even namespace or void. So I'm going to type now class person, okay? And I've got my braces there. And within this class, a person generally has a first name, a middle name possibly, and a last name for sure, okay? So what I'm going to do is a public string. I'll type in first name, and this can be our get and set, which means that I can change it and I can also get that value still. I'm going to make another public string. I'm going to call this one middle name, and that'll also be get and set. And I'm going to get my last name, and this will be get and set. Okay, so here's our person. Our person has a first name, our person has a middle name, and our person has a last name. Okay, so now when a person's created, they're born. So let's do a date of birth for this person for when they were born. So we'll do this one as let's do private, and I'll show you why in a second. So we go private date time. I'm going to type in here DOB in capitals. Doesn't matter what you name it, but generally, yeah, sort of keep some sort of rhythm about it. So some people like to do camel casing, which is lower, upper, lower, upper. In this case, I like to do uppercase ones for my public string, just because, yeah, it looks a lot neater. But yeah, generally you would use camel casing, but obviously it depends on your style of coding. Anyway, so I've got my private date and time. I'm just going to call this one date and birth. Now, I'm going to make this one a read-only value. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm able to change my first name, I'm able to change my middle name, and I'm able to change my last name. But my date of birth, I can't change. You know, legally, I don't believe you can actually change your date of birth. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know. But, you know, you can change your first name, middle name, and your last name for that matter. But you cannot change the time or date you were born. You're born when you're born, okay? So that's the reason why I'm making it read-only. I'm making it private only because when we do return a date of birth in C#, it usually gives me the date of, you know, the date and the time. And if I don't set the time up correctly, it's just going to say I was born at 12 AM. And then every person that we create within this program, they're all going to be born at 12 AM. So I'm going to make it private because I'm going to return a, you know, you could almost say custom string. I'm going to return a string that's formatted in the way that I want it to be formatted. Excuse me. For example, here in Australia, we go day, month, year. I think in America it goes month, day, year. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, so now that we've got these values here, with our person, you're either a girl or you're a boy, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a public enum, okay? I'm going to call it gender. And within this, we're going to have a female or a male, okay? I'm also going to create a public read-only gender, and it's just going to be called gender. Okay, we cannot change our gender. Yes, I suppose you technically can change your gender, but for in this program, we're not going to change our gender. We're just going to, you know, if you're a boy, you're a boy. If you're a girl, you're a girl. Spade's a spade, spud's a spud. Okay, awesome. So now we've got the beginning of our class, and we've got our parameters, or sorry, not parameters, but our values, you know, created, such as first name, middle name, last name. I'm now going to type in public person. Okay. And this is sort of where the object is created and what happens when that object is first created. So within here, I can now put parameters, which is really helpful because, for example, I'll just give you a quick demonstration of what would be like if I didn't create parameters. I would first say person because I'm now creating my object. I'm going to call it person0 equals new person. And there's our person. He's been created, okay? But this person at the moment does not have a first name and he does not have a last name. So if I go right now and just type in console, write line, and I'll just say person0 dot first name, okay? And then I'm going to go person0 dot first name equals Andrew, and then we'll write that to the console, okay? So you'll be able to see exactly what I mean. So when I run my program, you can see that right there, there's a blank gap. The person did not have a first name allocated. You know, there was no name. After we allocated the first name, I then wrote the first name back to the console, and you can now see it's Andrew. So parameters are really, really helpful because if I didn't put parameters, I would have to write in every single time for the values. So e.g. person.middle name, person.last name, the gender of the person, and the time they were born, although I can't access that from outside of my class. So by creating parameters, it just speeds things up a bit. It really does, and it's so helpful. So in order to do that, just go to our public person, type in string, and name your parameter. It's a string because my my value here, public string first name, it's a string, so it needs to be a string as well. So I'm just going to put fn, meaning first name. I'm going to go string ln, so I'm skipping the middle name just because I'm going to show you something that you can do in a second with parameters. I'm going to do I'll do my middle name. Now the reason why I'm doing my middle name after my last name is because, for example, in Turkey, people don't have middle names. Middle names cause so many problems. So when I was doing lots of paperwork with the government and things like that, my name's Andrew Richard Eberly, and they would always just put Andrew Richard as my first name, but indeed it was actually my middle name. So middle names cause so many problems on documents in Turkey. Anyways, so the reason why I'm going to do middle name after last name is because I'm going to create an optional parameter, which means that if you want to fill it out, you can, but you don't necessarily have to do it. However, for my first name and my last name, these are, you're obligated to fill in, this part of the code in order for it to work. So I'm going to do now string mn equals null. Okay, that's now an optional parameter. Okay, now I could also do my date of birth within here. So for example, we could make it so when the object's created straight away, the date of birth the date and time that we are currently at when that object's created, that could be when they're born. However, we want to backtrack and say, well, actually this person was born like 3 weeks ago, but we just forgot his birth certificate, there was a problem or whatever. We could also add the date of birth as an optional parameter as well. So in order to do that, let's go to DateTime, and I'll just put here date of birth equals null. Okay, now with the date of birth optional parameter, I do need to put a question mark there. Okay, so now I've got those parameters there. We now need to link these up. So what I mean by that is I'm going to go this dot first name equals fn, this dot middle name equals mn, because it is optional, so it's going to be null unless I tell it otherwise. This dot last name equals ln, this dot date of birth equals db. Now, because I am using a date of birth one, and date time, and we're just doing date of birth, and it's going to equal null. If it equals null, then let's make it automatically defaults to today's date. However, if it's not null, then it will obviously be that value that the person puts in the parameter. So instead of saying this dot date of birth equals dob, you're probably wondering why does it have a squiggly there. I do have to cast it just like that, and that'll fix that problem there. But let's say that excuse me, if date of birth happens to be null, then let's make it revert to today's date. If it doesn't, then that means that the person has actually put in a parameter value for their date of birth, and we'll link those up that way. So let's say if dbo is equal to null, then we'll just write this dot date of birth equals new date time, and we'll make it do it to today's date. So I could just write here date time dot year, date time now dot month. I've done that around the wrong way. That's fine. Dot now. And this will be day. Just like that. Okay. So this will give us the exact the day that they were born, which this will automatically revert to today because, you know, hence being now. However, let's also give it a time as well, just to make it look a bit cleaner. So I'll just write here, DateTime.now.hour, minutes, and even the second. Awesome. So that's that'll give us today's one. Although it doesn't really matter for the, you know, the hour, the minute, and the second, because I'm just going to return it in the format that I want to view it. I guess if you want to be really pedantic, you could certainly get it right down to the millisecond if you really wanted to. Okay, so if it equals null, we're going to default automatically to today's date. Else, meaning that it's not null, let's just say this dot dbo equals, I'm going to cast it, remember, DateTime dbo. Awesome. So this lowercase dbo is our parameter, and the uppercase dbo that's followed, that has this in front of it, is our private read-only value up here. So a read-only value, I should quickly mention, can only be modified within the constructor. This is this public person right here, okay? If I try and change it without from outside the public person, it cannot be changed, okay? So just a quick heads up for you guys. All right, awesome. So just quickly, I have left out the gender, so I'm going to put the gender here in the parameters. So before we even, you know, name our person, we need to define if they're a male or a female. In order to do that with our, you know, public enum that we've created, I'm just going to simply type in gender, gen, just like that. Awesome. And then once we've got that, let's write this dot gender equals gn. Cool. Alright, so let's go back up to our person, and you can see we've got a squiggly line there, and it's saying straight away, look, you need to have a gender, you need to have a first name, a last name, you can possibly have a middle name, and you can possibly have a data, you know, the time that you wish to give it. If not, it'll automatically go back to the folders. We do know that from before. So let's do that quickly. So let's create a new person. Person equals new person. And look at that, straight away selected for a gender. IntelliSense to tell me that we've got a person.gender, and let's make it a male. So let's do this as me. My first name, Andrew. My last name is Emily. And look at that, I could even close up the code just like that, and we're cooking with gas, okay? However, if I wanted to give my middle name, I can certainly type it in, and then I could even go as far as giving my date of birth. Okay, so I could just say 1991 05 23. Okay, and there we go. We've now created a person with a gender, a first name, a last name, a middle name, and the time they were born. Okay, how cool is that? So now if I just go to console, right line, person dot first name plus space plus person dot last name. So if I run this program, you can see it right there. I didn't put a space between the two values, but you guys get the picture. Awesome. So now that we've done that, let's say that we now want to actually view date and time was born. If I go here public and go date time, I'll just quickly write that to the console, and you guys will get a better understanding about what I'm trying to avoid here. So let's go right line, and we'll say person.dbo, just like that. So now I run the program, you can see that I've got the data, my date of birth, but I've got the time there, which is just 12 AM in the morning. Not something that we want to have, you know, on our within our program. Now, of course, if I don't have my date of birth here, let's comment that out. If I don't have my date of birth there, it will actually give us today's date and the time of which I compiled the application. That works well, but once again, I mean, do we really want to get right down, or you were born on the 8th second, you know, like it's a bit too much maybe. So what we can do to avoid this problem is we've got our class person, we've got our public person. We can now create a void method within us inside our person class. So let's go down to the bottom here underneath public person, and let's type in public string because I want to return a string, okay? And I'm just going to call it DOB, okay, date of birth, just like that. I'm now going to type in get, and then use some more brackets, and now I'm going to simply say return this.dbo.to short date string, okay? this will only give me the date. All right. Now, a lot of people, when you guys create moids, I do notice that you will use these brackets here, and that's fine. I can certainly do that, and I can take away my get, but it just means that when I'm writing into the console, you know, this.write line, and if I go DBO, and I'll put this back to private, so we don't want to be able to access that. I've got the squiggly line there because it is a method group. I could put the brackets there, and that it'll compile. It'll work. It gives me my date of birth. However, just to make things look a bit neater, because I'm never going to put parameters in there, I can take away my brackets from here, and then I can write my get, just like that. Okay. Now it's going to ask me to take away this, because it's no longer a method, it's simply returning a string. And yeah, it's just a way to clean code up and make it look a lot neater. So when I compile it, it's exactly the same thing. It works well. All right, awesome. So now look, there you go. You've now created a class. You've created a person class. So you've got a gender, you've got the gender, you've got the first name, middle name, the last name, and the date of birth that they were born. Within the constructor, we've got the public person. We've learned how to do parameters and then link those parameters up. So this.gender equals GN and so forth. We've also learnt how we can use simple logic to define, add a new value to our date of birth. So in this case, if the date of birth is equal to null, because remember this was just an optional parameter, then we're going to revert to our default, which is just today's date and time. However, if it didn't equal null, then we were able to link that up. So this.dbo to our parameter, and we had to cast it. So yeah, if you guys do want to know more about casting, leave a comment in the section below, and yeah, perhaps I can make a tutorial about, you know, casting and when to cast something or when to convert something, and so forth. All right, so just quickly before we wrap this video up, let's say we've now got a bunch of people, and we want to now put these into a list, and then we want to loop through that list to find people that are male, and the last name has, I don't know, 6 or more characters, or they were born between this date or that date, or anything really. Perhaps you could have 500 people, and you want to only get a list of the females. You could certainly do that. So I'm going to show you guys quickly how to do that, and then yeah, we'll wrap this video up. So let me just go back to my defaults. Oh, sorry, my date of birth. So let's create another person. So there's my person. I'm just going to copy this entire line. I'll put 3 in there. Now, because I've already got person defined, this is going to say, well, hey, this person already exists. So let's go person 0, person 1, and person 2. This one could be a female. Her name can be Jan, and her last name can be Blend. I don't really know why. I just looked at a bottle and that was there. She doesn't have a middle name. So yeah, it's quite sad really. And her date of birth. Now because I've taken away a middle name and I am using you know, an actual date, I do have to put a null, okay, because that value will be null. Now as for the date and time, well, she was 1976 on the 1st, and yeah, she's on the 23rd as well. This person here can be male. He can be Oliver James. Oliver James is the middle name. It's just, you know, it's Harry. It's quite crazy. And he's born on the same day as me, believe it or not, just to wrap this thing up. Okay, so there's our people. We want to put these people into a list. In order to do that, we can simply create a list. The type will be a person, and I'm going to name the list people. Equals new list. Okay, so now I can say people dot add, and now it's asking for a person item. So I'll just put person 0, and boom, he's now added to the list. So let me just add another one. So person 1 and person 2. Visual Studio will sometimes offer you, you know, ways to optimize code, and what I mean by that is just sort of do it within the correct pattern. So I've got a little squiggly line there. It's a way to simplify it. So let's just say, yep, do it, and there we go. So it's actually added those people to it, doing it that way. You can of course use the add version, which can, you know, come in handy if you want to add people after you've created the list. In this case, because we're adding the people to the list straight after we've created the list, Visual Studio's like, hey, how about you just put them in there as you create the object? So that's what it's done. Very nice indeed. So now we've got our people, we've got a list of people. Let's leap through the list now and tell it to write only males' names to the console. So we can now say for each person, because that's what it is, the type is a person, and I'll just put in there P in people. So for each person, and we're using the local variable, which is just P in this case, in people, if P dot gender is equal to person gender dot male, then let's just write that person's name to my console window. IntelliSense is killing me with the autocorrects and stuff. IntelliSense, such a cool thing, but when you're trying to like touch type and you're not really good at it like myself, it can be a pain in the bottom. Okay, so let's just do that. Let's just get the first name and the last name. Let's run our application, and look at that. It's looped through it and it's picked only the boy's name. So we've got Andrew and we've got Oliver. Let's say now that we want to loop through the people, and if the gender is a male, and also P dot last name is longer than 6, last name dot length, sorry, is longer than 6, then run to the console. In this case, Noah had a last name that was longer than 6 characters, so let's just add a few more onto the end of Everly, and there we go. So it's written Andrew and Everly, and the reason why it's written that is because Andrew is a male and his last name has got more than 6 characters into it. And yeah, so that's pretty much a quick tutorial on a class. So there you go guys, there's a quick video. If you did like this video, do comment, rate, subscribe, thumb the videos up, it really helps me a lot, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.